So I was reflecting on things I could say about my experience with Brazil, and I lived in Brazil 20 years ago, and I arrived in Brazil and I had hair, and I've left all my hair in Brazil, and now that they've turned on these lights, you get this. Although I do remember that I always had hope because I was losing my hair when I was in Brazil, and that's when there was an old song, Os Caracas que eles gostam mais. It always gave me hope in life, So I've been at Stanford now for about 5 years. I'm an economist by training. Please forgive me. I'm recovering. I did my undergraduate at Brigham Young University, and then I did my doctorate at MIT. I'm a little bit different in that I started actually in a business school. I worked for 8 years at a business school, a very small business school, and it was interesting for me to experience the culture that was in the business school and to take part in those investigations, to think about the different grants, to think about the different people who have demands, the constituencies that a business school has. But as time was going on, for reasons I'll give you just a brief overview, education was just attracting my attention more and more. I was becoming more and more interested in why there's such a divide between people who are able to go and get their education and people who aren't. And the short of, part of that reason is kind of a personal one in that I come from a very large family. We have 13 of us. And there's 8 of us who have really struggled and had all kinds of problems in life. And there's 5 of us who've been able to do something with our lives. And the difference is education. The 5 of us went on and actually not only finished high school, but went on and tried to go to college and even beyond. And the 8 who have really struggled in life, only a few of them actually finished high school. And as I was here in Brazil, I lived in many different communities where, very poor community. I lived in a few places where it was very clear to me that some of the friends that I was making there were just not going to have an opportunity. It was a very different Brazil than it is right now. But for me, as I reflected on education and as I started to do my academic career, I began to study education more and more and more. And when Stanford called and offered a job in the education school, I was worried about going to an education school coming from a business school. The business school, I knew how it was. I understood the culture somewhat. And it has been a real education in that I was guilty of being the kind of economist that Martin described today. I was an economist who had been in a few schools but not really sat down and really tried to understand them. And I've repented of that. I now have tried to make good on that in terms of really trying to understand schools better and to understand processes better. I'm not one of my interests is I like to ask questions. Martin is very good at. Martin can ask questions both that have never been asked. He can also ask questions that other people have already asked, but he answers them better. And with me, what I realized is that kind of my comparative advantage was in asking some questions and gathering data that nobody had been able to gather up till that point. And so one of the things that I do is I do a lot of randomized experiments. And I work a lot with school districts. I work a lot with states. I work a lot with foundations to take ideas that they're ready to put into the play and to experiment with and help them design that experiment so that when it goes into the field and when it starts to, and when we try this new educational intervention, we can try to see what happens as a result of it. And so, earlier I showed a slide where I talked about this kind of cycle of having ideas, innovating, and then experimenting and evaluating. And this is kind of the way I live my life, especially in my academic career, in that I spend a lot of time trying to design new experiments and then go out to school districts and see if they'll actually put them in play. So with the students that I've worked with, it's interesting that when I came, I think I was an economist. And now I think I'm more of an education scholar because as time has gone on, I have as many students who really are focused on economics as are focused on sociology or focused on a few in psychology, not many, because we have so many good psychologists. But one of the things that you'll find is that because of the fact that some of the solutions don't necessarily lie in economics or sociology or psychology, they lie in combining some of the best ideas from each of those and then trying to find a way to put those into practice. I wind up interacting with all kinds of students and advising all kinds of students. As we talked, I think, a lot about some of the academic offerings. The other thing that's very different for me as opposed to the business, I was in a business school where there were students and there was faculty. And we worked and they worked. And we expected the sweat and blood. But at Stanford, one of the things that I've really enjoyed is the proximity that there is between the faculty and the students. In that, as we interact with each other, yes, there's expectations of the students. There's expectations that they're going to excel. But I'm surprised at how close of friends I've become with all of those students as time has gone on. And there's something about that interdisciplinary, that openness that Stanford has that really encourages these types of friendships that not only are professional in that we're going to train and do our best to help, but also personal in that we're going to try to help individuals find the jobs and find those things in their lives that are going to be most important. And I've really appreciated that. I think the final thing that I'll just say is as one of the things, if you come to Stanford, is just prepared to be busy, prepared to get your hands dirty, prepared to work hard, because when our expectation, the sweat and blood, I actually love that statement, because that is, we do expect the students to work hard, and they put in hours. And sometimes I just smile when I arrive at work and there's already a few people there, and when I'm leaving work and there's a handful of people there, because they're actually trying to do something that they really enjoy. From the moment that people arrive to the moment that they leave, we're trying to think about research projects. One of our new students this next year, she was here this morning, and I met with her, and she said, well, what do I need to do next? So I said, well, think about what you want to study, because you're going to arrive on September 12th, and September 14th, we start working on the project that you want to work on. And so that's one of the things, really we've tried to create a culture around discovery. And that discovery extends in the classroom. It extends to that innovation, the exploration, experimentation, the evaluation, anything that we can do to try to move those ideas forward and offer those outside. So I look forward to some of your questions. I will tell you that having been in other places and seen the culture, it is a very unique thing that we have. And it's one that I've been quite appreciative of. So with that, I'll turn over to David to finish this up.